Now, you had a session where you were talking at Fluent, where you were talking about bookmarklets.
Yes.
Do you think that bookmarklets are an overlooked resource?
I do, and it's kind of funny. They've been around, I think, for close to 10 years, and the level of sophistication that we've seen emerge from them over the years has kind of taken baby steps from the very simplest ones where they had all the JavaScript in line on the bookmarklet itself to ones that were sophisticated enough to actually load an external piece of JavaScript. Where then you get to something like our bookmarklet, which is actually an application framework. We use the same bit of code that's running a bookmarklet. It's powering multiple browser extensions, and also now our embed button that we send out to third-party websites. So it's gotten pretty complicated.
Pretty significant, yeah. So what are the common limitations or concerns? I mean, is security in there?
Yeah, I think security is a big one, and it's really kind of a Pandora's box, as I kind of put out in the summary of my talk. They represent a huge opportunity, but also it's something that as an industry we're going to have to be very thoughtful about how we evolve. The opportunity is a bookmarklet running within the JavaScript context of the site that you're on has all the privileges of the JavaScript that site had authored or provided itself. And so a malicious third party with a bookmarklet could read all the cookies, all the client local storage from that site and do all sorts of malicious things. So we're very careful not to do anything stupid. We don't want to break any web pages. And we also have to be very careful that when we're operating in the context of a third party's domain, we have to take extra steps to make sure that our data and our users aren't compromised as well. Now, that's an evolving work in progress, and I think it's imperfect today. But the opportunity is that with a bookmarklet, just like with with user-installed scripts, you can actually start seeing things that look like application mashups, right? And what I mean by that is you can use our bookmarklet and go into a Google Doc, whether it's a Word spreadsheet or a presentation, and grab part of an element there and save it, which is a pretty powerful thing.
Sure.
And it's kind of ridiculous that hadn't existed before.
Right.
And that's a very horizontal cross-site thing. I want to be able to grab things from one site, embed them in another, mix and mash them together, and share them. And and it's hard to find something as good as the bookmarklet for doing that today.
Is the most significant upside the ubiquity of them? I mean, is that really where the opportunity lies?
Yeah, so everything that I described you could in theory do with a browser extension, but every browser has a different extensibility model. Right. So you have to develop it 3 or 4 times over. Our bookmarklet is the same piece of code and it runs on every major browser. We don't actively test it on Opera, but I've been told it does work. And so that's a real powerful thing, that one thing works on IE, on Safari, on Chrome, on Firefox.
Sure. And, So last question for you. I know you just announced a new feature. Can you talk a little bit about what it is and what it does?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a bit of news today. We opened up to the public. We have a whole bunch of new user-facing features. But for the developers out there, we actually introduced a new developer and publisher capability. Basically, what you can do is you can take you do it in 2 steps. You add our JavaScript file to your site, and you add a single element to it that will eventually be morphed into a clipboard button. Now, when you do that, you specify through some attributes on that element that you want it bounded to a particular element or a particular range of elements. Once you do that, the interaction then is really beautiful and simple. Your users can hover over that button, the region will glow that it's bound to, and when they click on it, it seemingly lifts it off the page, and then they could save it. And so if you're doing anything where you think you and your users would benefit from being able to have your content mixed and matched with other things as part of either a social curation experience, or maybe because you're providing things that are part of a research process, this can make it almost like a one-click interaction. And when you do that, you save the look and the feel, the functionality of the clips almost in their entirety.
Interesting. Well, thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.